Welcome back to Wirex Crypto Podcast, where we dig into the trends shaping finance and tech. I'm your host, Lianna Adams. Today, we're exploring a topic that's transforming the investment landscape, tokenization. Imagine owning a slice of a property or a piece of fine art without needing millions in the bank. That's the power of tokenization, and it's blurring the lines between digital and physical assets. Joining us to unpack this is CEO and founder of Mana Group and MembersCap. Lloyd, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on the show, Lianna. A pleasure to be here.
Great. So let's start off with your professional journey. How do you get into the world of tokenization, as it were?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief to start with and dig into anything of interest. It's been a 20-year career where really, I suppose, to come more up to current times, the theme has always been a real curiosity and interest in financial technology. We saw the opportunity really in London when fintech was becoming a big thing, 11 or 12 years ago, and you had your emergence of an environment where people who were technical, people who were more used to working in your Silicon Valley were coming to finance and, improving the UX and thinking, how can this be more digital? How can this be more transparent? How can this be more seamless? Which the, financial crisis had really, I suppose, caused a mistrust in bankers per se. Heavily focused on that world and really founded the Mana Group around trying to bring services to fintech companies. And those services included the movement of talent, executive search, advisory, and then there's R&D as well. And then as we went on, some active investments into the space. And then, over the last several years, really that took us into blockchain and started working with foundations and groups and investors in that space, of which I really look at as, payment rails. And so, the network that we had from finance and technology still was just as applicable for us to be curious about the trends in the space. And you look at a technology coming into existence, and what tends to be the themes are in phase one, it's really in the garage, and technical founders are dreaming big, and therefore you have these kind of oceans of opportunity. And so I suppose what we really tried to do is think, well, but where do we have some competence? And again, it's financial technology. So, okay, cool. There's gaming and there's, all these type of innovations that people want to achieve with this new payment rails. But what are the ones where our network and we might stand a chance of making some good decisions? And stayed in that, banking vertical. And through that process, worked with some companies who were really looking at the trend of tokenization and really grew conviction that there was one particular strategy that we had the team to be excited enough to do the hard work and bring to market, which, started the founding of MembersCap, which in real brief is an asset manager, a regulated insurance-linked securities platform, and fits into this big trend of RWAs and tokenization.
Yeah, wow, that's quite a journey. And, and I think it's really amazing how you have just seamlessly kind of, moved from the traditional financial landscape and just adding tokenization to this journey, right? So tokenization is, kind of set to bridge the gap between the physical and digital worlds. How, in your opinion, is this playing out right now? And, where do you think it's headed in the next few years?
Yeah. Well, I think that the opportunity is that you really do need traditional finance, in the offering for it to be significant. So I'm not, of the kind of contrarian mindset that DeFi and created in the digital asset space organizations will run the whole of finance over the time frame you mentioned, which is 3 to 5 years. I think, a lot of the things that have built conviction in this trend are where you've seen the likes of a BlackRock bring a product to market and is necessary. So that is one point I just want to, make clear about where our conviction is. On the point around, why do I think this trend is exciting? I think it's really probably a few things, but again, to keep it brief for now, one is just always when a new technology, or not always, but often comes around, then it just creates the opportunity for some refresh. And that might be that the trad businesses need to hire a different type of personnel. So a lot of the innovation here might be intrapreneurial, and that's a wonderful thing. And then secondly, it allows emerging opportunities for startups or smaller organizations. But really here, what I think we have with tokenization is, finally the efficiencies and the transparency that really just a whole load of banking has needed for a long time. And I think what fintech might have done was aesthetic. And I think what tokenization does is the real good stuff. Things are just going to be instantaneous, transparent, seamless. And what it allows you to do when you get to that downstream benefit is the democratization piece, which I think has been maybe what the passion around fintech the whole time has been. It's like, okay, there's these brilliant products, but to get them, there's these huge barriers of entry. So, let's think about that NFT movement, the digital art movement, which you reference. 7 years ago, how many people were walking around galleries and, going to Sotheby's and buying art? It's a real barrier to entry. It's quite expensive. And then if I look at, and again, it's a small community overall versus the traditional space. You look at how many people have become collectors of digital art because of NFTs. I think it is a real good proof point of, okay, ticket size is down. It feels more of that era. But actually the thing that I think it partly is as well is feeling like you're part of the movement. So 7 years ago, were you able to get access to talking to the artist and really feel like you're making an investment by buying their piece of work in their career? Maybe in small instances, but you certainly can now. So, I think that it's then on the other side, on the asset management side, where it's finance, perhaps because of these efficiencies, if you want to invest into a certain type of asset class, you've got to bring 10 million, 100 million. If you can get access now for 1K, 100K, a million K, then, or £1 million or dollars, or USDC or Bitcoin, then again, it just feels like an absolute mega trend, which is bringing a quality product to more people.
Yeah, I really love that. And I love this insight. And there were so many great points you've made about, democratization and how traditional finance is still really necessary in shaping this new landscape, right? And we're seeing tokenized assets pop up in areas like real estate and art. Have you noticed any industries where this is really taking off or, making a real difference already?
Yeah, well, I'll be careful what I say here because a lot of people have, conviction in bringing all sorts of real world asset classes to tokenization. And I suppose what you have to think through is, will they all come? And there's a question mark there. So what are the things that make tokenization valuable, more so or less so? And then in what order will they come? And so, you mentioned real estate, and, this is something that I think, when this topic was very first being talked through, is unquestionably a massive opportunity, but nonetheless, an incredibly complex one to bring enough of the market so that there's that flywheel that creates that benefit. So, tokenization, I think, has the promise of secondaries, private secondaries, if you boil it down. Where are you able to create something like an ETF, and secondaries can be, almost instantaneous, versus to bring real estate to market and have secondaries is a huge lift. So yeah, many projects across the fray that, have got great leadership and I'm sure can be successful over time. Really what we try and think about is, where are the things that are going to be able to come to market now, certainly in our own group anyway. And what you're definitely seeing, the tokenization of, let's say, asset management's back office products coming through that right now would be, things like money markets being tokenized. And I think this is because you've basically got like the big traditional players in. We've had the validation of ETFs. You have large liquidity, and what's, the most risk remote things to come through as tokenized. So I think asset management will, over 2 to 3 years, have pilots and proofs of concepts. And then I think over several years, you could see the whole back office tokenized. But, I'd love to know what your view is on what order you think that'll be as well.
I mean, sometimes just because you can tokenize something doesn't mean you have to tokenize it, right? And I think sometimes, we need to have that discernment and have that, to know what the intention is, right? On why you want to tokenize the asset. And what that looks like in practice, right? So I think, conversations like this is really important to unpack what that looks like, and some say tokenization could, democratize ownership, but others argue it might end up concentrating wealth even more. Where do you stand on that? Could tokenization actually make wealth inequality worse?
Yeah, my way of thinking through that, as someone who can't predict that, obviously, is AI good or bad? Is the web good or bad? Was social media good or bad? And I think that you have to think as an optimist along the lines of, the economic cookie grows, and as a culture, we are just going to constantly try and increase productivity and innovate. And here we have something that, if I forward 7 to 10 years, just have a very large instinct, huge benefits will come from it. However, to caveat that, Lianna, are there ways that it could concentrate in certain sectors? Well, possibly. I'm sure people are making really good arguments for why that might happen. So, the point being, should we not do it? And I think the answer is we should, but it doesn't mean that it's all going to be good. I'm not here as the number one kind of big fan of just go tokenize everything today. And I'm really trying to think through, to your point, which I completely agree with, where shouldn't we? So, with MembersCap, which we could go into more detail if interested, or I can just stay on the kind of answers. We just spent a long time thinking through, why shouldn't we do this? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? And anyway, what we determined was, this is very early. We believe, having gone and spoken to enough people now, that there is going to be a benefit to them for us too, and therefore a benefit to us. So if you look at many reinsurance funds, not all of them, but they will have a very low volume of LPs and allocators. Like some instances, there might just be one. You can think of pension funds, endowment funds, large institutions. And in some instances, perhaps there's 100. So think there's 1 to 100. And like if there's more, perhaps there's smaller ticket sizes, perhaps some family offices are in there. But if they are getting access to the real premium part of the reinsurance world, ticket sizes are going to be north of 25 million, 100 million for it to be interesting. And so I think what we have no question of is, to that democratization point, what we're not saying is, well, let's go let people write, $1 tickets into this tomorrow. However, let's absolutely provide access for people who have a portfolio approach, want this uncorrelated real world asset into that, and also who, philosophically align with the payment rails of blockchain, the use of the ledger, the use of stablecoin, which is obviously an absolute megatrend user case for the space, and some managers who are optimistic about using what could be negative or positive, the advantages for positive for us. We wouldn't have been able to, with 1 million, get into this type of a portfolio previously. We can now. And so I think you have to think through it all like that. There's been much promise around fractionalization of ownership. Right now, has that proved a big use case across the ocean of opportunities? No. Will it in 7 years, when all of the kind of like dots connect? Possibly.
Yeah, I suppose, this is why like MembersCap is doing, right, to shape, where this is going or could go. And I guess, to also ensure that that whole the ethos of like the question, like, should you or shouldn't you, right? And I think, I think it's great that at least, there are some people kind of like thinking about these products and how it could stand the test of time, if you know what I mean.
Yep. Yeah.
And, so what's holding tokenized assets back from becoming a more common part of people's investments? Are there any specific hurdles that need to be cleared first, besides mindset, besides,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, it depends what type of asset class it is. So I suppose you've probably got, on one end, really highly and rightly so regulated sectors. And then, on the other end, you've got completely unregulated, and then everything in the middle. And so I suppose there's probably two things. One, if it's regulated, and let's then just take something similar to our type of financial product, then you're going to have to not only get the individuals who want to make the investment excited about the investment, you are going to have to, on the real world side, get that side comfortable with the novel approach that you have toward tokenization. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that I think you need, enough user cases where the proof has been that these are really good investments to make. So we're very early in this trend, and there are some coming through. But I think as the next 3 years goes by, and more people can build conviction that, there are track records, and it's not just novel ideas or startups, then you start to get, all of that benefit colliding. So that's why, I'd be full of, humility around this massive trend and what's going to happen for everything in the ocean of opportunity over the next 2 or 3 years. And it's very hard to predict. It's going to take brilliant talent coming to the space. It's going to take large institutes getting behind it. And it's going to take track records building, and different ones are going to build at different times. However, over the next 5 to 7 years, from who we can see from an institutional grade, both from startup and institutes are involved, high conviction that this trend is not a fad. It's coming through, and there is huge opportunity.
You know, something that you said kind of caught my attention. Like, how do you explain, the world of tokenized assets to a non-believer?
Avoid them. Run the hills. Agree with them, and then that's it. Well, I think that's
the door.
I think that's right. I think that's a very hard thing to do. A large part of my and the team at MembersCap, Patrick Barrett, who's co-founder and managing partner, and Dr. Benjamin Fox, who is our chief investment officer, and Jeremy Williams, who is our director of risk and compliance, all with just the right backgrounds and experience, but also the right point in their career to take this entrepreneurial opportunity on. Are spending so much of our time on the education piece, and I think we all joke that we feel like teachers, really. And I suppose the really healthy thing is, if you go back a few years ago, really the to the point you were making, mindset might have been of what you're talking about, like, what is tokenization? Why would we want to do that? No. Certainly the difference of the conversations that we're in now is that there seem to be enough people in organizations who are optimistic, have built conviction, have seen enough solid things come through that they're very curious. And therefore, that's the right type of conversation for us to get into. If it's somebody who already absolutely understands it and loves it, brilliant. And there's more and more of these individuals. And then, there's a category of person who's not there for us to try and educate. And then there's a category of person who, there's an education piece, and us, then spending our time of explaining the benefits. And they'd be much like, some of the generalized things I've said previously, which is, there is a big, massive trend here, and a feeling that the organizations who commit to it over the medium term with a long-term approach and build good track records and do all the right things, and aren't here for the short term, going to get an increased opportunity because of the market share. And so that's been one of the pleasures, is that there is so much appetite for this. And, podcasts like this that focus on it, and events that are solely focused on tokenization and RWAs, they just weren't there 2 years ago, and, they're prolific now. So, that work is also being shared by the community of people with shared incentive, which is to really drive it through into the market. And, we're blessed with some of our partners at MembersCap, such as a Coinbase or an Apex Group, Uniservice, an awful lot of asset managers from an administrative back office perspective. And, right to the top of those organizations, you've got the owner and CEO, Peter Hughes, and his lead of digital assets, Bruce, who are, going to say the same things, I'm sure, a lot better than me, which is people are moving over the next 2 to 3 years, but, over the next 7, I think they're full of conviction. Their back office will be administrating through a tokenized methodology, and they've got full commitment to that. So, whenever something this big is being moved forward, I think you do well to not just be in your own corner, but there's really a lot of collaboration that fortunately does go on to help that education get out to the market.
Yeah, education is so important, and it's really an exciting space to kind of to track and to get involved, right? Because I also see a lot of tokenized assets in the impact space. And I think that is really interesting, how you tokenize impact as an asset. But yeah, which leads me to the next question of are there any risks that comes with tokenizing assets that most people don't think about? And what should investors be aware of?
Well, I think that, there's probably two sides to this. So I think one side is, nothing changes here. There is, investments that need to be made and due diligence conducted. And, investors should be very prudent with, building their conviction in what they invest into. So I don't particularly know why tokenization would have more blind spots, apart from I can understand perhaps around the question, because it's tokenized, do you think tokenized is a good thing to invest into? It's a trend, then you go and make investments. You should really look at it as you would anyway. By the way, people make poor investments. And of course, on the manager side, they need to conduct the KYC that's making sure that the investment is by the appropriate type of individual. So if you, let's say, were to take a MembersCap, what we're not saying is we're bringing this product to retail, because we think that the right type of phase for us to come to market is to get investment from institutional grade investors, and to make sure we KYC them properly, and then over time we might be able to syndicate sophisticated investors, like you might get in a Lloyd's of London syndicate, into this asset class. Whereas, some of the more, other end of the spectrum side of things, somebody has a house, let's tokenize the house. And isn't that wonderful? Because now 100, 1,000, 10,000 people can have fractionalized ownership of this. And let's just say, I don't know, but let's just say, therefore, there needs to be little KYC. It's just for somebody to work out the maths that if they're happy with that investment. None of this is a financial advice. I would just, say the person needs to be very comfortable with what the risk return profile is. And so I suppose probably what we have today is that a large amount of the resale investors are already in the digital asset space. And that space has very volatile risk return rewards by the nature of crypto, for instance. And so some of the tolerances there will be, very, very high. And I suppose if you were coming into the space as somebody who's not particularly invested in volatile crypto markets, then you would just take the same approach. But the tokenization element gives you access to something that you're not able to get in the traditional sense, and is fractionalization therefore exciting for you? And I can think of many examples where it would be. So I don't think I can give you the answer generally where the blind spots are, but I don't particularly think that tokenization creates more. I think it's the same thing.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, because crypto's reputation has taken some hits over the years. In your view, what can the industry do to rebuild that trust and change public perception?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's encouragingly happening. I think that you see a movement of all the right things, where the organizations, the government bodies, perhaps the politics, the talent, the investors, move with the times. And, I think if we go back 5 years ago, some people were afforded these huge opportunities because of the moment that they came into the space. And, mistakes have happened and bad stories have happened, and it can connotate the whole space. And I think that, everything just dials up in terms of those mistakes that have been made, in some instances not happening. And so, most managers or organizations or, talent that is looking for opportunity is going to go with where the track record's stronger and the approaches are long-term. But I think we're seeing that. So that's not to say that, the whole world thinks like that, and that's not to say they ever will. And I'm not sure that that's necessary. But you can just see the difference in terms of sentiment from the key leaders in the news or in conversations or at events. There's almost no asset management or investment businesses right now who at least won't have divisions who are focused on this space. And I'm sure there are some, but certainly there's so many more than a few years ago. And when that talent comes together and when they focus on something that's a mega trend, then, user cases will just be found. And so I think, just the weighting of how many people would flippantly be like, oh, it's all kind of crypto bros and it's all meme coins slightly changes. Now, what I would say, we're, at the back end of 2024, is that still absolutely exists because, I think we've been through a period where, prices haven't done what prices did a few years ago. So, people can kind of look at various parts of the space and say, well, it's not going up as quickly as it used to. But in a way, that's almost good because it becomes more reliable. So maybe the market starts to price itself, which I think was some of the things that just felt crazy previously. I mean, we'll see. But for me, it's all slowly feeling like it's becoming more kind of institutional grade.
Yeah, I love the slowly, because I think there is that sentiment and there is that, vibe, I guess, or, that everyone is being a bit more accepting to crypto and that it's here to stay, right? Regardless. And what are you going to do about it and how are you going to approach it, So how do younger people's views on trust in crypto compare to traditional banks of finance? Are there any interesting trends you're seeing?
Well, I think an election might have just been one based on younger people. And that might indicate whether we like the result or not. That people of a younger generation are, long on crypto, and it makes sense. The experience you can have by sending payments just instantaneously is just so superior. And, I think we have a huge user case with stable coins. And so I just think there was a very long period of, exchanges came around, people were in essence trading altcoins. Some people spend a lot of time on that to make money. There was DeFi, but these things probably all very intimidating to, just a normal person. But a whole load of the people who certainly did engage in that would have been of a younger generation. And I think now as we see things come through into the institutions, who are the people who are running the projects? And I'm 41 years old, nearly 42, just to explain what age I am. I think most people who are running those projects are on the stage in some of the largest financial organizations on the planet, probably of a peer group that are, close to my age or younger. So, I think as certainly the next several years pans out, financial institutions are going to have huge parts of their operation focused on this trend. What do I think is different, particularly about the young generation? I don't know what you categorize that as, like 18 to 27, or what is it?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, well,
that's Gen.
Yeah, what Gen is that?
That's Gen Alpha, isn't it?
Gen Alpha. Okay, amazing. Well, I think that's right. I think they're rightly titled as probably coming up with alpha strategies, and really, understanding that there's huge opportunities in this space for them, and lots of novel things will be created, because if you are them and if you are ambitious, then you are going to look at what the mega trends are, and you're going to probably gear your career slightly to that. So I don't know, 20 or 15 years ago, you're going to look at the trend of the internet and go and work at an Amazon, or 30 years ago, you're going to go and sign up for Goldman Sachs, and 10 years ago, you might go and work at Revolut, and all of those firms are still great and have these type of divisions in them. All of the ones I just mentioned, actually. And so if you're now at that really key point in your career where you've got your education and had your first job or two, then I think you're just going to look at your Coinbases and your Circles, and seriously consider, well, shall I go and work there, which many have, or shall I go set my own thing up in that space, or shall I go work at one of the high growth businesses? And that's what it takes when there's a new technology layer. It takes, the ingenuity and the entrepreneurship of talent really manifesting its potential. It doesn't just happen. And that's where I think we've hit this moment where all the right sides are in. So if all the right sides are in, it just becomes a question of how big is it? There's this other massive trend right now, AI. And so, of course, if you're that kind of Gen Alpha, you're looking there too. It would be remiss to not be on top of that technology. And of course, there's lots of debate about how does blockchain and AI come together, and lots of people doing great work toward it. So I'm not going to tell you that tokenization is going to be in 100 years looked back at as big as AI. Probably not, but who knows? But certainly, I think if you're in the finance game, and in 10 years you look at the administration of assets, then it will probably be tokenized, just to kind of set a prediction there about maybe AI is the big trend. But for us, we wouldn't want to go focus on that because it would be a distraction. You need to really have, when you're making predictions, a circumference of expertise and competence. So that's a game for someone else.
Yeah. So, in response to that, everyone kind of brings something to the table, right? So when it comes to building trust in crypto, who do you think should take the lead on this? Should it be up to, the companies, or the Gen Alpha, the crypto community, or even regulators?
Well, I think the lead won't come from the regulators. I think the regulators, will make decisions and react and be lobbied for what they feel comfortable with regulating and letting happen and not letting happen. But they're obviously crucial. So it's a hard question, because I think every single segment of who you just mentioned is crucial. And that's what I'm saying, because I feel like all of the parties are at the table. I suppose who always needs to take the lead is, the people who are running the organizations who are in the game, and then that attracts more talent and institutions to it. But right now, I think it's both. I think, there's no better educators and sponsors for the movement and the space than the people who've built credibility and done the right thing. So, a Brian at a Coinbase and a Jeremy Allaire at a Circle, sit on two of the large platforms, and, through a period where, to your point earlier, some trust was lost from what would have been classed as their competitors, theirs wasn't. It doesn't mean they've got everything right. It's incredibly tricky ground to have made progress within, but I don't think many people could look at the decisions they've made and where they've ended up without being in awe for what they've built and how important it is today in our space. And so, what's exciting is, more of these companies getting to significant market share and bringing more optionality, doing it in a credible fashion. And likewise, a lot of the progress right now is, the partnerships that are happening. If you take the protocols, the foundations of the protocols, a lot of their focus right now will be, we partnering with both projects that are startups building in our ecosystem. How can we support those projects to have partnerships with the large institutions? So I really think the leader at the institution partnered with, the next or the current leaders in the projects in the space, really at the forefront. And then, I can't tell Gen Alpha to do anything. That's obvious. It's a cultural thing. They don't like being told what to do. However, I'm sure they're the next Brians and Jeremys. So there's a big opportunity for them to take that opportunity. But I suspect they won't until they've got a significant enough platform, be the main voices. But certainly the main voices can inspire them.
I love that. And I think, it takes a village, right?
That's right. Yeah, that is right.
It's been a really great conversation. And before we wrap things up, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, thanks. Yeah, really pleasure to get to talk to some of these questions. I hope I tried to be as transparent and specific enough to interest the audience. All I would say is, if anybody wants to reach out to me, then you can find me on social media. The name is Lloyd Wahed. I think I am the only one in the world. So you can just put Lloyd Wahed into a Twitter or a LinkedIn or a Telegram and probably find me. But no, I'll just finish with, I host a podcast as well called Searching for Mana. And it really has been a pleasure to get to talk to so many of the leaders and just be curious and find out what makes them tick and, the things that they've got expertise in and absorb it. So, just kudos to you guys. I know how hard it is to get one to the level that you have. And, to the last question, I do think it's also, platforms like this spreading the good word that really supports the ecosystem. So congratulations.
Thank you so much for the kind words, Lloyd. And thank you so much for walking us through the world of tokenization and sharing your insights. It's really been exciting to see how this could democratize investment and bring new opportunities to everyone. So thank you for that. To all our fantastic listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. Don't forget to express your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing this episode. Thank you for tuning in, and until we meet again, stay well.